Welcome to the podcast where together, every Monday, we explore hospitality in its very broadest sense. From culture and cooking, cocktails and coffee, nutrition and farming, politics and animal welfare, organic and sustainability, family and business, entrepreneurship, and much, much more. Come and learn with me, Mark Cribb, about where our food and our drink comes from, and the businesses and, more importantly, the human beings that thrive on where we decide to spend our time and our money. Sign up to our weekly newsletter at humansofhospitality.co.uk and hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. For over 20 years, Hugh Lambert travelled the world as a TV cameraman, director of photography and editor. Often he'd find himself in some of the remotest parts of the world, perhaps living with a local tribe. On each trip, he'd try different foods, and some of them were quite out there in terms of taste combinations and ingredients. I'll let Hugh reveal what the roasted figs he ate one day in the jungle really were. And with that broad-minded approach, it isn't surprising that Hugh has created a drink with unusual ingredients, Shanty Spirit, a seaweed botanical vodka. And this isn't a gimmick. As you will hear, Hugh falls into my beloved category of brilliant and possibly slightly bonkers obsessive. Someone who describes his spirit as 4 years of research driven by a lifetime's passion for being by the sea. They really were years of intense focus, macerating countless seaweeds and then working through a long list of botanicals until he got to a point where he could collaborate with a distillery and see his idea bottled up. Now, as you know, if you've listened to Vince Noyce at Portsmouth Distillery about rum and Alex Camerling at Cam & Sons, I love these stories of dedication, particularly when they bring something new and authentically different to the market. Hugh's venture is still very young, but when it comes to his future success, I'm excited to say that you will have heard it here first on this very podcast. Enjoy the conversation. Hugh Lambert, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast this week. Very much appreciated.
Nice to see you, Mark.
Thank you. We are going to chat all about vodka and the ocean and seaweed. So it seems fitting, as you know. I know you listen to the podcast. I normally start with where are we on planet Earth, but we're in my venue, aren't we?
Yes, lovely venue it is too, and the sea's looking gorgeous today.
Yeah, so it feels appropriate. One of the reasons for meeting here is that if you're going to chat about the ocean and seaweed, we are literally overlooking the ocean, the English Channel, aren't we?
Yeah,
So
fantastic today.
yeah, good. Okay. Seaweed and vodka wouldn't necessarily seem like an obvious combination. Looking forward to learning all about it. Can you just explain a little bit, where did this idea, what was the trigger for this?
Well, I guess the trigger was a confluence of things, actually. So I was coming to the end of my career in television. I'd always had a love for the ocean. I was looking for something else to do. And one of my last projects was working with a forager called Roger Phillips, who was the godfather of foraging. He's a very chipper octogenarian, lovely guy.
Good book on Amazon if people want to buy it as
Very
well.
good book,
Yep.
being out for 30 years, Wild Food. I think it's being published for 30 years now. And I was privileged enough to do a pilot with him, with a couple of friends going over to Ireland. Foraging for bits and bobs, some of it coastal, some of it not. And then taking those back to the Ballymaloe Cookery School that were having a festival at the time as well, and working with Dorina Allen, who's a celebrity chef over there. So we provided the ingredients, and then Roger would disappear and she would cook something up. And it just so happened that part of that was seaweed, of course. And I had never really thought about eating seaweed, but all of a sudden I became very interested in seaweed. And when I got home, I started cooking with it myself, and it just added that other dimension that really wasn't accessible through many foods, just that rich, deep flavour that really appealed. You know, I'm a Marmite lover, not a hater, and I do love things all umami. And for me, it was a really enticing flavour profile. At the same time, there was obviously a lot of buzz going on in the craft gin world, and sometimes I crossed the paths with gin manufacturers and producers via TV, my TV work. People I knew were bringing out gins. And it really was a bit of a light bulb moment. I'd had too much coffee before bed one night. I woke up with a start and thought, actually, I think seaweed and vodka would marry beautifully. I'd always been a fan of a dirty martini, had a penchant for savoury things, not really much of a sweet tooth. And I just thought it was well worth investigating.
Nice. And when you say you went home and started eating seaweed, you lived by the coast at this point? Or you were...
Yeah, I've always lived by the coast.
And were you going out and foraging locally for this?
I have foraged for it. I've bought it from places like the Cornish Seaweed Company and Mara Seaweed, but I was also going out and foraging. And I went on a foraging course actually with another author, Hugh Lambert, in Lyme Regis.
Right.
She introduced me to some other seaweeds, and I got a handle for it. But it was never the route that I wanted to take, to be just foraging for everything that we were going to use in the product.
Yeah.
There were other things to do.
Well, at that point, you started with, I'm just going to use some seaweed and cook it in my dinner. At that point, was this seaweed you were going out and foraging? Because I'm kind of thinking, if you buy seaweed online, does it come as a fresh product, or is this a dried thing when you're putting it in food?
Well, it depends what seaweed it is, actually. So the kelps and wakamis and sea greens, they come as dried products. They're not really affected by dehydration. But pepper dulse, for instance, the truffle of the sea, that's a very different beast when it's dried.
Right.
So really, you need to get that fresh, and you need to use it straight away. So.
Okay, amazing. So you had this kind of you'd gone from eating it handy, I suppose, that you were fundamentally researching your future career without knowing it when you were off filming. What was your background prior to this? You were often travelling around the globe, I understand.
Yeah, so I was a TV cameraman and an editor for a period, and I got into the whole industry really to do scientific documentaries, which took me around the world, took me into jungles, living on desert islands, meeting tribes, doing a few myth-busting documentaries on things like the moon landings and crop circles, working for National Geographic and Discovery and broadcasters like that.
Hang on, I can't not ask. So is the moon landing legit? You researched it?
Yes, it's legit.
Okay, good. And crop circles? Are they aliens?
No.
Oh, man. Things could have got really interesting. I would have gone way off on a tangent if you'd gone, well, actually, Mark,
sorry.
let me tell you a story.
We made our own crop circle, actually.
Did you?
Yeah, just a couple of bits of string and a plank of wood.
Yeah, that's a bit low tech, isn't it? Or an alien ship.
Very low tech.
Okay, nice. That sounds in many ways, not necessarily the crop circle, but living in jungles, travelling around the globe, I don't know, quite a nice lifestyle. What was the trigger to stop?
It was a great lifestyle, fascinating. It was very much a solo mission. I mean, often I'd go off for a month, 2 months, 3 months on occasion, to do these projects. But it wasn't really great for relationships, and I was keen on staying in the relationships that I was in when I went off to do these things. Often it was quite attractive for the other person that I had an interesting job and that I was seeing the world. But after 1 or 2 of these expeditions, really, their enthusiasm for the whole thing waned a bit.
Okay.
I then had a child.
Right.
And I thought, this has got to change. I can't go off and do these things anymore. That was fine, actually. What I needed to do was rework my work situation and do some more domestic-based stuff, which I did. So I did things like the Scrap Heap Challenge and Come Dine With Me, lots of food programs. All sorts of stuff, a whole myriad of things.
Nice.
So, but it still meant that I was going away to work.
Right.
So I ended up as a single father, working away every other week for TV. Sometimes, up to 100 hours in a week, and coming home and being a dad to, a 2-year-old, and kind of, investing in that as well. And it wasn't really sustainable.
No, that's interesting, I think, because we often think in hospitality that it's a particularly difficult industry to have a family with, because generally we are serving people, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Chefs are in the kitchen at the main time that most people are kind of off with their kids and stuff like that. So there's this perception that this is a challenging industry, and people probably don't realise it as much with TV. But ironically, you decided, right, I'll get out of TV, jump into hospitality. Fortunately, not as a barman.
No, absolutely. No, I completely see that can happen in hospitality.
Yeah.
I mean, there really is no time zone in TV, and there really is no time zone in hospitality, I imagine.
So at what point then, so this was a bit of a hobby, you'd done some filming, you'd sparked an interest in seaweed, you'd woken up one night and wanted a dirty martini. At what point do you go, you know what, this might actually be a thing, an actual commercial opportunity?
Well, I felt that it had legs potentially, but I couldn't really.
That first night, or after
not that first night. No, that was just an idea. But I quickly sort of followed it up and went to forage for some seaweed, and also bought some seaweed in because I didn't necessarily trust my own foraging abilities at the time.
Is seaweed like mushrooms where you can make a critical mistake, or is it a bit safer?
Not really. Much safer.
Okay, so it's more of a, Does
kind
it
of
taste good?
98% of seaweeds in the intertidal zone are edible.
Are they?
But they're not all nice.
Okay, that's a fair point, I suppose.
But there are a couple that can get you. Yeah, so sorry, what was the question?
You start. I'm trying to think of how you go from waking up and thinking I'm thirsty to this is an opportunity. Presumably you did some practicing or something. How did this start?
So I created what was coined my Breaking Bad cupboard in my office.
Okay, nice.
And I got hold of lots of different seaweeds, and I started macerating them for different periods of time. And different sources of the seaweeds, different provenance of the seaweed, different periods of maceration, just experimenting with it. And finally, one day I thought it's about time I tried some of that. And it had probably been in there for 6 to 8 weeks or something. I was kind of thinking along the lines of slow gin or something. Okay. And I was thinking this thing is going to need to be steeped for months.
Yeah, because it's quite a subtle flavour.
To really appreciate the flavour.
Yeah.
So I was sitting there having my staple comfort food, spaghetti bolognese, one night. I was working on the computer, and I thought it's about time.
Were you sort of single man at this point? Every single man's meal, that I think, isn't it?
I think more than likely I was.
Okay, perfect. Well, not stereotypical in any way, but yeah.
No, of course. So I ventured into the cupboard and I got some out and I tried it with my spaghetti bolognese, and I thought, oh my God. And I'm very proud of my spaghetti bolognese, by the way. I know everyone is, but mine's particularly good.
I doubt it. Yeah.
And I tried it with some kelp maceration. I just thought...
Your bolognese?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
As you do.
Not on it.
That's very traditional Italian.
As a tipple.
I often think that. Bolognese, a little bit of kelp. That would be lovely.
Well, exactly. You wouldn't think so, would you?
No.
But in actual fact, I was blown away by the marriage of... tomato and kelp.
Yeah,
I just thought
that makes sense.
It was just incredible. I just thought this is, and tomatoes are full of umami as well.
Yeah.
It was just a stunning combination, I thought. So
Amazing.
I thought, right, okay, well, this has definitely got legs.
Okay. Yeah, great. So what happened? You carried on practicing, or you phoned a distillery?
No, so I carried on practicing for a very long time, actually. So for the next couple of years, I really got involved in trying and experimenting with all sorts of different seaweeds.
Really?
From all around the country. I wanted to keep it British, and we have some of the best seaweeds in the world on our coasts, apparently because of the sea temperatures and also the currents. So it is quite an asset of the British coastline.
Gulf Stream, I suppose, bringing warm water over a long way. Presuming I'm no expert.
And the wave action. I think it needs relatively cool water.
Right.
So we get some great seaweeds up on the kind of west coasts and Northern Ireland, Cornwall, of course, as well. So yes, so I experimented with a lot of seaweeds. And finally, after a couple of years, I kind of shortlisted 5 that I really loved.
How many are there? Roughly hundreds or
hundreds? Yeah.
Really? And you said you were just trying to looking for. And are they quite? Because you imagine, I guess, I never really thought about it, but I suppose there is a range. I'm imagining a sort of fairly subtle flavour, but I suppose some of them are actually quite strong, are they?
Yeah, no, they are very rich.
Yeah.
Some of them, I've got some here if you want to have a sniff of them at some point.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, well, go on. Yeah, what have we got?
Okay, so that's sea buckthorn, actually. So that's not a
buckthorn. So
that's
this
not
is
a seaweed.
Even it's got the word sea in it.
That's a berry.
Okay, wow, that's really strong flavour, isn't it?
Very jammy, sour. It goes beautifully with seafood as well.
Okay.
This is your bog standard kelp, Laminara digitata.
Okay,
which
so
is
for the
otherwise known as-
benefit of people listening, you are Kilner jars full of. Okay, this actually does look like a seaweed. It's been dried, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, and I can literally eat this as is. Nice.
You can nibble on that whilst you go if you like.
Okay. Unsurprisingly, salty.
And quite rich, I think. You think on the nose, I think it's quite a deep, rich.
It's actually really good, isn't
caramel
it? You
almost.
could almost just. Where'd you get this from? This is stuff
That's
you bought
from the Cornish Seaweed Company.
Cornish Seaweed Company.
Yeah.
You just buy it as is. Normally used in food.
Yes, normally used in food. You can wrap your salmon in that, or mix it into dashi. They use it in Japan as part of a stock. It adds
Quite a nice
deep,
texture as well. It's
rich
actually a
flavour.
little chewy. It's not crispy, is it?
No.
Quite.
I mean,
It's a chewy kind of.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the classic seaweed that you would eat like the nori snacks you can buy, the wafer thin snacks you can now buy in the supermarket. Which are using kind of lava seaweed. This is a bit more robust, and I never intended you to eat it. Really, it was always just to
smell it.
Just to smell
I like to. I'm a restaurateur, isn't it? We've got to be able to eat it, not just drink it. This one, wow. This one is what's this?
So
This
that's
is a
sea
much
greens.
lighter
That's a combination of gutweed,
right?
which isn't a very attractive name.
Really strong smelling.
And sea lettuce. Yeah, and it's quite hay-like.
Yeah,
and
okay.
it's kind of like sorrel. It's got a sort of sorrel element to it when you cook it.
This is why I like hospitality and doing these podcasts. And I've said it before, but I'm going to say it again because there's always some crazy, geeky, obsessive who will go off and go, right, I'm going to try hundreds of seaweeds and then I'm going to, pair it with booze and create these things. There's not many people that do it, but then there's always one who will actually turn it into a thing. So
Well, I just got hooked on the idea, and I really felt it was going to work, and I just needed to push through this period. As soon as I tasted the kelp with the tomato, and I was wowed by it. I thought, well, if I'm wowed by it, then other people will be wowed by it too.
Yeah, which is where most people then switch the telly over or open a beer or whatever. But well done you, because you went right.
Maybe
let's
perhaps
carry on the journey.
Obsessional, I think.
No, it's perfect. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So you tried all of these ones, and then you came up. How many did you say? 5.
So 5.
You ended up with 5.
Yeah, I mean, they're very deep flavours.
Yep.
A lot of them, and so but they all bring something slightly different to the table. So I didn't want to just use a single botanical. There's a few gins out there that have seaweed in them. The Isle of Harris gin, which I love, uses sugar kelp, and Barra, I think, uses bladder rack, and there's a few other. There's now an Irish one, I can't remember the name, and I can't pronounce it, that also uses 5. Funnily enough, they've come to the same conclusion, and I think they're using pretty much the same seaweeds as we are. But because they all bring something different to the table, I didn't want it to be a singular botanical. I wanted it to be a more complex blend of the seaweeds that I love, because they all add something slightly different. So a complex umami base. And then from there on, it became a question of, right, okay, that's all the deep notes in the flavour profile. What are we going to add now?
Right.
And it was very much a blank canvas.
Yeah.
With gin, I know there's often some fairly common botanicals that people use, and then they may add other botanicals to kind of give provenance or a twist on the concept. But with this, it really was a blank canvas. And actually, the reason this came about was because 4 years ago, I didn't even realise that gin was flavoured vodka. essentially.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah, no.
And since I started this journey, it's incredible the amount of people that don't know or
the difference between
just assume that gin is something completely different to vodka.
Yeah.
And they don't know that gin is flavoured vodka, because flavoured vodka to them is generally single botanical vodka, like a toffee vodka or a blueberry vodka or whatever. But I never wanted it to bring out. I wanted to bring out something that was as complex as a gin, but not a gin.
So no juniper, fundamentally.
No juniper.
I'm right in saying that gin has to have juniper in it.
Absolutely, yeah. So that is the key ingredient for gin, and then you can put anything else with it you like. But often, if you do a graph of what botanicals are in a gin, there's quite a lot of commonality between them.
Yeah. So if you take juniper out, it's then a
flavoured vodka or a botanical vodka, which is an emerging category.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, huge growth.
Yeah, I mean, Diageo are playing with
some
this.
of the big players are putting them out there. So, okay. So you specifically didn't want juniper. Partly you didn't want to do a gin, partly because you're not a big fan of it, or because you recognised that the gin market was becoming more saturated?
Both. Right. I grew up loathing gin. It really wasn't for me. For me, it was over.
You grew up as a child loathing gin, or no? Even as an adult, you continue. We're all just growing up still.
Well, there was a period of taking the odd tipple from the parents. Bar.
Yeah. And you preferred vodka.
And vodka was definitely more my thing. Gin was just too much. However, through the craft distilling period, I've been introduced to some wonderful gins.
Yes.
And there's plenty out there. That I really do like now.
Yeah, it's often the way, I think. You don't appreciate it because you probably were drinking bad gin in many ways, but now there's some beautiful stuff around.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what did you end up using then? So you definitely are. I'm not having juniper. What did you choose?
Seaweed.
But for your botanicals.
Well, that was a big experimentation as well. This went on for another kind of year of really looking into.
How many did you try?
Many different things. Some that are found in gin, some that aren't. And I went around the houses, and then really finally came back to things that actually historically are kind of obvious that they go with seaweed. Wasabi. Wasabi from the Dorset Wasabi Farm. Which is a fantastic ingredient.
It is great, we use it. Yeah.
Yes. So as soon as we distilled that, we kind of thought that, well, that's wonderful. It's got local provenance.
Yeah. Great in a Bloody Mary.
And great with a Bloody Mary. Yeah. And in fact, the product that we've developed is actually got other things in it that work really beautifully in a muddy Mary, in a Bloody Mary. Yeah. Like the citruses that we use, the bergamot and the yuzu. The wasabi, it's got Dorset sea salt in it as well, so it's almost a Bloody Mary kit.
Yeah, amazing. It's amazing how much you can cram into a spirit in that way, I think, isn't it?
Well, I think Monkey 47 have done a good job of that.
Very true, yeah. And to still appreciate that complexity of flavour. But the same when I interviewed Cam & Sons. Have you heard that podcast? You should listen because, he was the same. He was years just trying loads and loads of, different botanicals to make a vermouth. But, Alex, equally as bonkers. So as you're going along, at some point then you make a decision that, right, this is good. You decided not to build your own distillery, but went out to find a partner who then also helped you continue the kind of, the perfection and the balancing of the vodka. Is that correct?
Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, prior to that, actually, apart from doing the obvious friends and family kind of circuit and introducing it to people and putting it in the mix with things like ginger ale as a mule, it works brilliantly, and with the Bloody Mary. I also had a friend who was a mixologist and had won some mixology awards, and he came on board. And came in to visit me a few times, and we sat and we kind of did a few blends and sample stuff together, and he was equally enthralled by the prospect of doing a seaweed vodka. He came from 5 generations of restaurateurs and drinks producers and in Weymouth, and had been in the industry for a long time. So
that's good.
So he was a great
gave you a bit
test.
Of confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. That wasn't a completely bonkers idea, which generally I felt it probably was.
Yeah.
So we sat and we worked on it for a while together. And then I left him and I kind of created 9 variations on a theme, actually. Actually, if you don't mind, I'll rewind a bit. Cause
I don't mind.
I also did a gin foundry course
Okay.
with Olivier, who I found very inspiring.
Right.
And most of the people in the room there were, of course, wanting to bring out gin.
Yes.
And I had a chat with him in the break. I sort of told him what my idea was, and he as well thought it was wonderful that I was doing something that wasn't a gin.
Yeah.
You know, that I was using a neutral grain spirit as a blank canvas and doing something completely different with it.
Nice.
So he was quite excited by that and gave me a few tips.
So dangerous, isn't it, when you meet people who agree with you, and all of a sudden you go, "Oh my God!" I just thought, you know, in some ways, if they'd said I was bonkers, I could have put this to bed. But now they've said it's a good idea.
Exactly. That just keeps
oh my
you going.
God, here we go. I'm on the trajectory.
For sure. So I've met
Exciting,
I've met a few of those that have kept me motivated.
You just need that little
over the last 4
sign,
years.
that little hope. Wow, brilliant.
Yeah.
Good on them.
So so after that, and blending these samples together, he had recommended that I spoke to Charles Maxwell from Thames Distillery, who I had a meeting with, and also they got in touch with Tony Riemann from Strathern Distillery. Very different beasts, you know. Thames Distillery, a huge distillery, you know, with loads and loads of contracts for gin, and they're making their own, of course. Strathern priding themselves on being a very small artisan distillery up in Scotland, in Perth, and they were a little bit more open to something that was so left field, as far as I could see. And I had a long chat with Tony, the owner, whilst he was driving through the Highlands one day, and he was interested and he was on board, and he suggested that I came up to see them. So I flew up and had a chat with him about the whole project, and really that was the early days. And then I went on to send them these 9 samples, which were a variation on a theme. And I waited for a response, and I waited and I waited and I waited, and kept on bothering them. And everyone had always told me persistence is the key, and that's so I was very persistent. And finally, I got a call from his head of development, Zach Shenfield, who was the head distiller at Lone Wolf for Brewdog's distilling arm, and he's got quite a rich accent, and I was sitting on my mum's toilet actually at her flat, not in doing the deeds, but the only place I could get reception was there. So I was sitting there thinking, oh, what's he going to think? And he said, I really like them all. And I said, you like them all? He said, no. I don't like them all. I like number 4.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So he said, in fact, I love number 4. I think it's amazing.
Wow.
I think you know, all the botanicals you're using are completely different to what I normally work with, you know, and I'm absolutely intrigued by this. You know, I've never worked with wasabi. I've never worked with galangal. I've never worked with yuzu, although yuzu is getting very popular now in the gin world, of course. Yeah. You know, so he was very excited about collaborating, really. Wow. And it was more of a collaboration than just asking somebody to make me a gin.
Yep.
And as they said to me, he said, you know, we get a lot of tire kickers around here coming in, thinking it's going to be fun to bring out a gin brand. But they normally come to us with just a name and a vague concept, and we have to design them the product. But you've been tinkering and experimenting for a number of years now, and you've brought us something that's kind of almost there. We just really need to fine-tune it.
Amazing.
And for me, that was perfect. You know, it wasn't my field, you know, and you know, it was my passion. Yeah. But I gathered a lot of experience over the years and in the craft distilling sector about, you know, technique and botanicals and everything else. But, you know, I wasn't an expert. So I wanted to hook up with somebody who could basically help me through that final stage.
Yeah, amazing to find somebody passionate. Like you say, it's all too easy to just go off and say, please make me this. But to find somebody who actually genuinely loves it and is excited and wants to get involved, destiny, Hugh, wasn't it? It's
I think it was. Yeah, he's a very talented guy.
Yeah. So he didn't literally. So number 4, did it change some more? Then was it a case of going back and doing some more tweets? And
we added bergamot.
okay, right.
That was it.
Yeah. Just like that. Went, this needs a bit of bergamot, or tried a few things and went that one.
Very quickly, because it's such a new concept. Seaweed. I mean, they said to me, it's very bold. You want to call it seaweed vodka. I was well. Initially, I wanted to make vodka out of seaweed.
Right.
That was actually the initial thought.
Yeah.
I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could just convert? Maybe there's a starch element, in seaweed that we can turn into alcohol and create vodka from seaweed.
Yeah.
But not possible.
Okay. So what's the base of the product then?
Wheat. Organic though.
Okay.
Organic wheats as well, which I also felt was very important for the vodka market.
Yeah.
Everyone associates vodka with, or they want it to be clean and pure, and so that was the route I really wanted to go down.
So bergamot, you just added it just like that. You could tell one sip, and you went, that needs a dash of bergamot.
No, what actually happened was I had a meeting with some Swedish importers, because the very punchy nature of this concept has made people instantly pay attention to it. It's quite out there conceiving a seaweed botanical vodka, and people are very curious from the off. And so I got set up for a meeting with Swedish importers,
right,
who love seaweed, and they'd been doing the rounds of some trade shows in the UK, and they'd come across quite a few seaweed products at the moment. And they said to me that one of the products they'd come across was seaweed and bergamot combination, and they thought it was fantastic, and they thought it was well worth looking into. So I did.
Right. I'm sure you did. And I don't suppose you just had a little look either. So it was quite deep.
Yeah, absolutely. So then we played with distillations of the peel, which is obviously used in Earl Grey tea, and flesh, and combinations of the two, to see what we felt worked. But actually, in retrospect, bergamot marrying so well with tea, seaweed has quite a tea quality to it as well, and it does work beautifully. But I love yuzu. I never wanted to use the yuzu, so we stuck with the yuzu as well. So we've got a combination of yuzu and bergamot for the citrus element.
Now, I think to your average person on the street, probably in a little bit with wine, and you drink it and go, I've got coffee and vanilla and a little bit of dirt. Most people are not going to be able to tell and have a sip of vodka. Do you think, have you always had the sort of palate that could pick up these kind of nuances, I suppose, of flavours?
Yes, I think I was never shy of trying anything. So I've been very open-minded about flavour. And of course, travelling the world quite frequently, I've been forced into situations where I had no choice often either.
Right. I suppose if you're filming a tribe in a jungle, you get what
exactly.
you're given.
I mean, one of my stories is being offered what I thought was roasted figs one morning by the chief of a tribe, and as I put it up to my mouth, I noticed that it had little legs sticking out of each corner, and actually it was roasted frog that was spawning. So I'm up for trying most things.
Okay, yeah, I imagine
that's given me quite a broad-minded approach to taste and flavours and everything else.
I just want to ask, before we go off seaweed slightly, but are seaweeds, are they like a lot of things? Are they seasonal? Do they change during the course of the year, flavour-wise or supply-wise? Or?
Yes. Yeah, especially.
I ask a closed question, get a closed answer. Yes, good. So does that make it? What is it? Is it the fact they're either available or not available, or is it the fact that I know the answer is going to be both, isn't it? But the flavours change, and how do you thus?
Yes, the flavours can change. There are optimum times to pick certain seaweeds,
like veggies.
Like veggies. So pepper dulce is one of the most obvious ones. It's perfectly in season now.
Is it?
Yeah. But
where do you find it?
So mine comes from Northern Ireland. You can find it in Lyme Regis.
Can you?
But it's in plentiful supply in Northern Ireland. And as I'm not picking it myself at the moment, I've got a lovely lady, Gillian, who goes out and picks it for me.
Do people farm it as well, or is it just foraged?
Well, talking to a local cafe and restaurant around here, the Crab Cafe,
Yeah, I know the
Nigel Bloxham.
Yeah.
He's starting up a seaweed farm
Is he?
locally, so I've had some chats with him about it, and I would like to bring it closer to home.
Yeah.
But everything's for tweaking.
Yeah, that'd be good to have a chat with. Actually, we'll get him on the podcast at some point. So I'm trying to think how you do that. You presumably need a fairly big old chunk. Is it something you do in the ocean, or do you recreate the?
No, it's in the ocean, and I think you can put ropes out, and you can just start creating your own seaweed.
Bit like mussels.
Yes, exactly.
And stuff like that. So, how long from this kind of, you found a distiller, they're excited, you've launched a product. How long did it take to actually get to the point where you've got a bottle of booze?
Probably about a year,
Really?
actually.
So the whole thing, from the waking up in the middle of the night?
No, 4 years.
No, yeah, 4 years. 4 years. Wow. So
4 years.
When did you launch?
White knuckle ride.
Yeah, that's amazing. I genuinely, well done.
Thank you
for doing it. So yeah, when did it launch?
So we partially launched at the Weymouth Seafood Festival last year.
So that was 2019.
Yeah, okay. I think it was July the 14th.
2019. So you're just a baby still, 7 months old, coming into your second summer. I suppose you missed most of last summer, guessing that people drink more booze in the summer.
We did, and the reason being that we, because we've done quite an elaborate bottle, there's a
just a beautiful segue. It's like we rehearsed this, because that's the thing. So when you got in touch with me, one, I loved the story, the name, which we haven't actually spoken about yet, and then I love the brand. Did some of that come, presumably if you work in TV and you're a cameraman, you go around, you're in the creative sector, had you always had this kind of eye for detail? Does that happen looking through a lens? I suppose you pick up on creative detail?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's the only way, isn't it, to focus? I can't function without being able to focus. I'm not a multitasker by any stretch of the imagination. I absolutely have to hone in on something, and then I have to get it to a point, obsess about it until I love it.
Right.
And that's my only litmus test.
Yeah.
The yardstick is that I have to fall in love with it before I can move on to the next element.
Okay, because and I'm just going to pick one up for our benefit, but it's a beautiful looking thing. Can you just describe where the name Shanty came from and the brand and how it looks?
I think Shanty came in another over-caffeine flash of inspiration not long after conceiving the Seaweed Vodka. And I love the word Shanty.
Yeah.
I love it. It's onomatopoeia. The fact it sounds like what it is. Not so drawn into the historical side of it, more the sort of spiritual element of the fact that the sea and the coast is inherently in our DNA.
Yeah.
And that Shanty is actually Shanty songs that sailors used to sing, connected them, made them pull together for the same cause, etc., etc.
Is that when they were used in was it, sort of thinking of rowing ships and stuff like that? Where does it come from?
So hauling the mainsail, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay,
singing Shanty songs together. It's a bit like a chain gang almost.
Motivational kind of.
Exactly. Gives them the rhythm.
Pumped.
Yeah, gives them the rhythm. They pull together. They're stronger that way. It's all about connection.
Yeah. People have unfortunately missed out on the enthusiasm that you were doing the actions for a shanty there for you. I'm disappointed that we've not got this on video. We'll take a photo of you doing a shanty later. But yeah, thanks for bringing it to life. So yeah, no, I agree. It's a really, it's one of those things so simple, and that's often the way with things that you fall in love with. But yeah, shanty. And then the design elements.
So I love modern design. I love simple, clean branding, but I just felt that if I was going to bring out a premium product to the market, that I wanted something that wasn't just screaming out from the bar. I wanted something that the logo in itself is quite modern. It's just got a kind of negative space elements that cut out to suggest seaweed and kind of fluidity through the logo. And the logo on its own, thank you, Adriana, works beautifully, I think, especially the larger it gets. You get more and more and more of a sense of the movement within it. But as well as that, I felt that if I was buying a premium product, I want to be able to hold it and look at it and find interesting things in it and explore it. So I hooked up with an old friend of mine's sister, who's a local Dorset artist, Emma Brown-John, and we talked about what we were going to do with this blank bottle. And I went to her initially because she's amazing with colour.
Right.
She's an incredible artist with colour, but she's got a graphic design background as well as a fine art background, and I wanted that sort of fusion. to work with somebody who had those sort of abilities for the project. Initially, I was thinking about going down a very abstract route for the rest of the bottle, lots of colour and everything else. But actually, she suggested monochrome. And I went with it because vodka, again, is all about clarity and purity. And people might be put off if I'd perhaps steeped a bit of seaweed in it, and the spirit had gone slightly green or whatever. And so I wanted it to be crystal clear. And using colour around the bottle kind of affected that as well, because it coloured the spirit. I'm not a fan of bottles that kind of don't show the spirit, because I like to know how much is left in the bottle.
You've bought one with you, and I'm going to say not enough.
I've got another one here too. There you are.
Okay, good. Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Okay, and do you think that's made a difference? So then you take this out into the market. It is unique. How's the reception been? And do you think the brand has helped?
Just to finish off on the design, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all, Hugh. Sorry,
yeah,
I got distracted by how much you drank.
It was very important to me that every seaweed that's in the spirit is represented on the bottle.
Okay, yeah.
Actually, so this here's the Dabalox next to the spirit of the sea's face.
Okay, I will put some photos of the bottle online so that people can maybe do this live and go along. But yeah.
And then we've got the kelp over this side here, and we've got the pepper dulse here, and the seagrass and the sea lettuce up the front. Nice. So it's all there.
So it all means something.
And that infuriated Emma, the artist, because I restricted her to only using the seaweeds that were actually present in the drink.
Authentic.
But she's done a great job.
Yeah, no, it does. It looks awesome. How was the response?
So the response has been fantastic. People, so at the Seafood Festival where we launched, obviously it was the perfect event for us, being seafood.
Do you sing? Actual shanties
to
at
myself.
The event? Oh, okay. Damn.
Yeah. So people were captivated just by the fact that they could have a free sample, of course.
Helps,
definitely. So we were
easier than selling double glazing, isn't it? It's giving people booze.
And it's free. Try it. Seaweed Botanical Vodka. Okay, I've got to try that. Yeah. So we were 6 deep at the bar for 2 days.
Wow. Amazing.
And the response was incredible.
Yeah.
And I was floating on air.
Another sign.
And this was the first opportunity that I'd had to put it in front of the public. It's all well and good putting it in front of your friends and families. Absolutely. And trying to widen that on occasion when you can, but just to go down with your product that you've put your heart and soul into for 4 years, and they've got no reason to lie to you or any allegiance with you, and just offer it up and see what they think. And the feedback was fantastic.
Did you have a little happy sob?
I don't think I had time for that.
No, or maybe afterwards. I just think it's incredible when you see something come to life. How about when you first saw the first bottle? I know when I open restaurants sometimes, and the first time it really feels real is when I see the name of the restaurant and the address printed on the top of the PDQ machine or something like that. It's those little moments where you go, oh my God, this is actually happening, it's real. And it's an incredible feeling that something that's only existed in your head for such a long period of time all of a sudden is physical in front of you. Do you remember the first time you saw the finished bottle or saw it on a shelf being sold somewhere, and was it?
Yeah, I mean, I highly recommend it. Seeing a thought through to a product is something that's really hooked me now.
Yeah. Have you walked into a shop yet and seen it on a shelf that you didn't expect?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And people have sent photographs of it in different locations. And
that's amazing, isn't it?
And that it's just very warming to see it finally out there. And it's very early days for me now. And when we did the Seafood Festival, we didn't even have the bottle.
Oh, right.
The bottle was a few months behind. In fact, It was only supposed to be 1 month behind, but we had the product, and I had a virtual bottle on a computer screen that I had there.
Big poster.
And people were, and not even a big poster, big logo on the bar that we made. People were pre-ordering on the basis of the little sample they had.
Nice.
And I just thought, this is fantastic. I'm walking away with nearly 100 pre-orders from this, and they're trusting us, and they haven't even seen the bottle. So the response was great, very encouraging. and we've gone on to do one trade show since in Exeter this year where we have had the bottle. And again, great response from wholesalers, distributors, bar owners, restaurateurs. They love the flavour. I'm very happy with that. Currently, and I was very much looking forward to going out and putting it in front of the public again this year, but unfortunately, obviously, we're in a situation where that's not possible right now.
Yeah, so for slightly dating the podcast, I'm not sure when it's going to go out, but I don't think the coronavirus is going to have disappeared before this goes out. So yes, we are, in that bit of the unknown, I suppose, aren't we? We're still trying to flatten the curve. Let's see if this dates, but challenging times, as Boris has just told people across the country not to visit bars and restaurants, and we're just coming into summer. But yeah, it's you're right. It's disappointing.
Yeah,
but long term, you've got an amazing product. I guess it's just a case of hang on tight.
Yeah, I'm optimistic, and I'm booking up events. August, September 2022. What can you do? You just got to keep going, haven't you?
Yeah, what can you do? And I'm going to try and explore Corona in a more in-depth way in some other podcasts, but I think, too early to do it now, so we won't. Coming out there off the back of, I guess, this huge gin revolution or evolution, renaissance, shall we say, in the last couple of years, does it feel like good timing with that? Because I guess you've got people's interest in artisanal kind of craft booze peaked at the moment, but maybe a flood of the market in many ways with a sort of gin in every town. Is the vodka market different? Have you got similar competitors to what you're doing? What's your thoughts around your timing?
I was told once that, because I was bringing out a unique product, that I was really going to have to educate the market on this product.
Yeah.
And at the time, I said, well, I think that's a great opportunity. To have something to talk about, to have such a point of difference that people are interested from the off. I don't care whether I've got to educate people to get people into this. It might take a little bit more of a push. It might. Initially, I think, but I've had some significant people responding very well to it, and influencers, for want of a better word, responding very well to it. So I don't think it's going to continue to be an uphill struggle. It's not an uphill struggle. Most people who try it like it. Yeah. The vast majority. I think yes that. The momentum of the gin sector has definitely educated people in itself. People have, as with me, that I didn't even understand that a gin was a flavoured vodka, and people now know that the vodka is a blank canvas that you can do all sorts of things with. There's all sorts of things happening in the spirit world, and this is sitting neatly between gin and vodka, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm hoping that it will appeal to both.
Good. I guess one of the key markets is the bar trade, hospitality specifically. Mixologists have had a chance to have a play with it and come up with some drinks. Getting it in venues, had a good response, started to see it.
Very good response from venues, especially venues that are pushing the boundaries themselves a little bit with flavours. They're in the business of bringing something new to people and creating conversations around new products.
Yeah, good. Got a distributor yet, or are you selling directly yourself at the moment?
Still selling directly myself. I've got a few distributors interested. It's just a question of, at the moment, we're very small batch, so there's not a lot of headroom in terms of profit margin for us at the moment, especially selling into trade. So it's just a question of trying to slip in somebody in the middle. So when the numbers come up for us and we get some economies of scale, we'll be able to do that.
Okay. And retailers, can people buy this yet in any shops that they know?
You can buy it online from the website. There's some local stockists around town, and we're just looking into wholesale options at the moment. Very early days for us.
Amazing, exciting. So you did this, your original trigger was, I don't want to, or I cannot travel around the world filming tribes in jungles anymore. I'm looking for a lifestyle change. you've certainly got one. Any kind of, I don't know, key learnings, key thoughts around the difference between running a drinks company to being behind a camera traveling the globe? Big question.
It is, and I've had to take it day by day, step by step, and learn about everything on the fly as I go, intensively, but treating it as a step by step product and not project, and not moving on to the next phase until I'm happy with the phase that I've been working on, whether that's the distilling and we haven't touched on the fact that it's distilled in a different way. It's vacuum distilled rather than copper distilled, and learning about that through to I've never designed a bottle, and getting involved in that and the different permutations, endless possibilities. And finally settling on something that's a little bit like having a tattoo. You've got to commit to something eventually, and all you can do is kind of follow your heart.
Yeah. You're in the middle of the journey, I suppose. You're not out the other end yet, so maybe it's a little bit early. But hospitality is a sector that's got a lot of glitz and glamour, or it did have until about 10 days ago, with people wanting to get into it. But any advice that you would give to people out there who've got this little itch, this little idea, this little kind of bit of creativity that's been, bugging them for ages? Any key things you've learned already where you'd say, God, I wish I knew that 4 years ago?
I think you've got to listen to people, and you've got to listen to the right people, I think. And if the right and significant people are giving you good feedback on the way, and you can sense whether people are interested, generally, and that encourages you to keep going. So I think if you have an idea and everybody sort of sighs or turns away or changes the conversation or whatever else, and I think you need to tune into that. But if you have an idea where people are all ears and want to hear more, then it gives you the encouragement to keep going with it, I think. So I think you've got to have your radar out as to whether this is going to work or not.
And I guess finding that genuine niche, of which you correctly pointed out that I didn't quiz you on the distilling. And it was interesting, when I was doing the research, that difference in vacuum distilling is fundamentally around heat again, and that subtlety of flavour. Is that right? Can you just explain a little bit about
Yes, so the majority of distillations are done on copper in alembic stills, the traditional stills, which look beautiful. And that's where I started with this. We were using, Zach and I were using copper. But we wanted to explore, because ultimately we wanted the product to be experiential. We wanted it to be like plunging in the sea, like connecting yourself to the ocean through taste, like moving mountains. We just wanted to be shifting seas, taking that experience, inland for people who couldn't be by the ocean, or celebrating the coast when they are by the ocean, and kind of enhancing that moment as well. So we wanted it to be crisp and fresh, like plunging in the sea in the morning. And so, especially for citruses, distillations generally happen at about between 60 and 70 degrees. So you're cooking them, So with an orange peel or something like that, you're basically giving it a slightly marmaladey note compared to extracting those flavours at room temperature, which is what happens with vacuum distillation. So, we're essentially pulling off fresh yuzu, fresh bergamot, pulling off the flavours of the ocean rather than cooking the flavours of the ocean. And then we do each botanical individually, and then blend them together. So that some distillers will use what's called one shot, one pot distillation, where all the botanicals are all thrown in together. But ultimately you're dealing with organic botanicals that can vary through seasons and different sources and everything else. So you get more control, in our opinion, by doing it individually, and then blending those afterwards. And we tried copper distillations versus vacuum distillation for every single botanical that we use, and as far as we were concerned, it worked best for everything.
Really amazing. Again, thank you for being that obsessive to get those kind of details right. Because what I really love, and I think too many people come into the market, and particularly with gin, I think we've seen it, and they're kind of almost Googling, I don't like my job, what can I do? Oh look, gin's in fashion, I'm going to make a gin. But some people, really try and do it properly. And ultimately, it's the authentic ones that really do it. I interviewed Vince from Portsmouth Distillery about rum, and again, he'd spent 3 years traveling around the Caribbean, popping into rum distillers and learning about the different types of rum, and learning about molasses, and learning about sugar syrup. And if you take it to that level, ultimately you will get a genuinely authentic, different, proper kind of product. And although it's hard and it takes time, and you think how many 4 years of research, if you were to charge for that time, it's an insane level of investment, isn't it? But I do believe that do it right for the right reasons, and ultimately it will pay.
It's 4 years of research driven by a lifetime's passion for being by the sea. And that's why I couldn't let this go. The being able to bring out a product that encapsulates my passion for being on the shoreline, is what I wanted to transfer into a product. And I know I'm not alone with that sentiment.
Yeah, I almost think it's maybe deep rooted into our DNA. Maybe if we came from the oceans, but you don't find many people who don't find looking out to sea a pretty inspirational space. And with everything that's going on in the world at the moment, probably even more so to, I walk I walk my dog along the beach every day, and I look out at the ocean, and you hear the waves and you see the sea, and there's something that, I don't know, makes you feel a joy to be on planet Earth, doesn't it? And I don't want to move to Mars. And I think if you can bottle that and create that kind of like with the name, with the brand, with the actual product, with its authenticity, then that's a beautiful thing, isn't it? And if you're in a city somewhere and you want a little bit of the ocean and Hugh's crazy obsessive mind in your drinks cupboard, then herein lies the opportunity. What's the bit now, at the moment, the bit that you wake up in the morning and you go, this is bloody exciting? What's the bit of your new life, your new role that gives you the greatest joy?
Opportunity falling in, not by accident, meeting amazing people already. I think because of the positioning of the product, I'm kind of ahead of my time, actually, in terms of the people that are showing interest in it. And I'm very thankful for that. So that's very exciting and unnerving at times. But as I say, the response has been fantastic. So good. I'm going to keep going.
And post-corona, when the economy is booming and we're all in a happy place again, you have the ability to ramp up supply. Do you ultimately plan to move where it's distilled from, or are things going well with your Scottish relationship?
So as well as taking expert opinion on this in terms of the final creation of the product, and collaborating with Strathern, who have now been taken over by Douglas Lang, actually, or acquired by Douglas Lang. So, yes, I will keep it there for probably 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
To let the brand get traction. That was always the point. I always thought it would be insane to bring out a micro distillery on the back of a seaweed vodka. Yeah. Let's just see if the market respond to it at all. I might just have to put this whole thing to bed.
Yeah. Minimum viable product kind of thing.
But it was attractive because Strathern had always told me they could produce anything from 250 litres to 100,000 litres a year if so required. And so the mechanism was there in place, whatever the response was, and the expertise and the bottling line, etc., etc. So that was very attractive. However, I would like to bring it home. I would like, my dream is to set up a little micro distillery, perhaps in a boatyard somewhere, get a couple of containers, weld them together, create a little micro distillery that maybe looks out to sea if I'm lucky. and bring it home back to Dorset.
That sounds beautiful. Have you got an anchor tattoo or anything like that? Look, you paint a beautiful picture with your words. Again, congratulations. I love it. I think it's brilliant. It's a great product, but it's even more, it's got a great story. You are already, even so early in your journey, you're already a great human of hospitality. So I was excited to meet you, even though it was only a couple of months ago. And yeah, thanks for coming and sharing your story. If people want to buy a bottle, and how can they not with that description, best place to go at the moment is your website. Is that right?
Yeah, website, and we can just ship it out to you directly. That's probably the best bet at the moment, but we've got social media up and running at the moment, so we'll make announcements of distribution and wholesale as they come up.
Amazing. Website address?
www.shantyspirit.com.
Shanty, SHANTY, spirit.com. And your handles, which is the best place? Instagram, Facebook? Where are you?
Facebook, Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah.
At Shanty Spirit for Instagram and Twitter, and at Shanty Spirits, plural, for Facebook.
Okay, perfect. I will put links to all of these on the website and the show notes. So if people go to humansofhospitality.co.uk, type in Hugh in the search field and your show notes will come up, and we'll put all the links there as well. But for now, good luck. I have every faith that it will go well. And yeah, thanks for spending the time.
Pleasure. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast. And remember that on the website humansofhospitality.co.uk, every week we put on some show notes and some links through to the various websites or social media that are mentioned. And we also do a nice little breakdown of that week's conversations into specific topics, so you can jump through the podcast and just listen to some of the highlights if you wish. If you've not done so already, if you could leave us a review on iTunes or one of the other podcast players of your choice, that would be hugely appreciated. Thank you so much, and we'll be out with another episode next Monday.